DEI Must Die. Hello everyone, welcome to the Active Learning Podcast. I am your host, Viana Maya. Today, we are going to dive into a provocative topic that has been stirring up much debate lately. The owner of X, formerly known as Twitter, declared on X that DEI must die at the end of the year, 2023. This then led to a war of words between him and other billionaire, Mark Cuban, who supports DEI and understands its value. At a recent conference, I heard a sentiment that DEI should disappear from a panel member, who then stated that if it was up to them, they would ban DEI. Ironically, this individual owes some of their success to DEI initiatives. Over the past years, we have seen and heard of quiet quitting, terminated contract, reduction in funds reserved for DEI initiatives, or completely scrapped initiatives, specifically those that benefit Black and people of color. So what does all of this mean for the future of DEI initiatives? In this podcast, in this session, we are going to dive into some key segment. We're going to talk about DEI fatigue. We're going to talk about the language of woke, the weaponization of woke. We're going to talk about how we need to reform DEI. And then we're going to dive in and give you some steps to move forward and the conclusion of the session. So come with me. Let's first address and discuss DEI fatigue. One of the primary reasons for this fatigue, I believe, is that there is a disconnect between conversation and action. So we have been having numerous hard conversations about diversity and inclusion, equity, equality, etc. Yet, the tangible implementation of these discussions have often been lacking. This gap means that many employees and stakeholders do not see or feel the benefit of DEI initiatives. Many DEI efforts have been superficial, focusing on safe, non-confrontational actions such as representation, increasing the representation of diverse individuals in a company, rather than making meaningful change. These initiatives often fail to address the deeper issue of systemic inequalities and discrimination, leading to the perception that these efforts are more about the optics than the substance. Another significant issue is that DEI roles, particularly those held by Black women and other marginalized groups within an organization, often not given the power or authority to implement real change. These leaders are appointed to position, but are frequently sidelined or restricted from making the efforts needed in order to make the change. So that then seems like their role are ineffective and tokenistic, which leads to either the quiet quitting or the letting go of the individual, sometimes through a scandal or after a scandal, an allegation, etc. So where does all of this, where does the term woke fit in? Let's dive into that. Now, the term woke has been co-opted and weaponized in recent months and years, often used to target DEI initiatives. So, originally woke was a term used within Black communities to signify awareness of social and racial injustice. However, it has been distorted and used to undermine efforts towards equality and inclusion. Critics of DEI use woke to dismiss legitimate concerns about discrimination and inequalities, framing these efforts as overly politically correct and unnecessary. This rhetoric can cause a hostile environment for DEI initiatives and those leading it. One prevalent misconception is that DEI initiatives are about giving unqualified individuals opportunities they do not deserve. So you will hear terms such as DEI hire, or the latest one during the American campaign is Black jobs. that suggests that candidates for marginalized groups are only hired to meet diversity quotas and would not have secured a job if they were white. This narrative undermines the skills and qualification of these individuals, perpetrating harmful stereotypes and biases. I really believe that that is one of the biggest issues that we have right now, that there are individuals in organizations now who do look at the employees, and some even have the boldness to say that you are only in this role because you're black, because you're Asian, because you have a disability, etc. So it means that if somebody is hired in the role of a higher position where they're having to supervise colleagues who are not seeing them for the skill set that they have or the title that they have, but are seeing them as individuals who only got the job because of their physical identity rather than contribution, that is a problem that organizations are not addressing. Organizations are not making it clear that, yes, this is an initiative, just as Mark Cuban said here. Let me just read out this quote for you. DEI does not mean you don't hire on merit. Of course, you hire based on merit. Diversity means you expand the possible pool of candidates as widely as you can. Now, there is an assumption in organizations that people would understand this, that they would understand that DEI initiatives is about widening the pool. Yes, a group of people, say the HR group, the CEO, whoever has bought into creating the initiative. But if you are not talking to your wider employee group to let them know that you have created these initiatives because you want to bring in fresh talent from a pool of people that we do not otherwise access. So we need to talk about it. We need to challenge that stereotype. We need to challenge that misconception, because it actually then leads to that lack of belonging in an organization. Data has been something that's used when it comes to DEI over time. But again, we need to always reiterate this data. For example, McKinsey's data that states organizations in the top quartile for ethnic representation at senior level were 39% more likely to outperform their competitors than those in the bottom quartile. But again, what this data doesn't fully pushes onto is the fact that the individuals in this senior level have to be given authority to implement and to do their job to their fullest potential in order for you to have this benefit. And over time, this is what we've seen lacking in diversity roles in organization, where people haven't been given the full authority to do the job that they need. We're going to put in some articles and statistics for you to read, but the term woke has been overused to dismiss, to weaponize against, to take away, to distract us away from the actual work that you're trying to do. So as an organization, if you are on the fence and sitting back and you have thrown that terminology around, I've heard that from people that I did not expect to say it. I don't want to be seen to be too woke, or can we make your anti-racism program less woke, etc. We don't want to frighten away the employers, all of that kind of conversation without really fully understanding what the term woke means. So let's go back and let's reclaim it. Woke means that you are fully aware of the social injustice in the world, in your workplace, in our society, etc. That is all that woke is, okay? You're awake, just as it would be in a dictionary if you were reading it as a term. Now, if you want to counter the anti-DEI mindset, let us look at a case study where DEI program that is successful and it is going to continue. So the example that we're going to share is the Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women program. What Goldman has done is they've launched a 1 million Black Women program, and they're committing to 10 billion in direct investment capital and 100 million in philanthropic support over the next decade to address the dual disproportionate gender and racial bias that Black women have faced for generations. The program targets key areas including access to capital, job creation, workforce advancement, and education. Now, how have they done this, and how are they still able to continue the program even though affirmative action has been dropped? Well, what this program sets apart from all other is that it relied on data to drive its initiative. What Goldman Sachs did was utilize extensive research and data analysis to identify areas where Black women are most underserved. This data-driven approach ensures that their investment are impactful and targeted effectively. So for all organizations, there are plenty of research out there. Though Goldman Sachs, this is an organization that has the money to go and do that extra research. But over the last couple of years, various organizations are out there that have created the data that shows you the gap, especially the gap, for example, we know about the gender pay gap. But then if you really look deeply into the gender pay gap and break it up into ethnicity, into race, into socioeconomic background, you will see that the gap widens even further. So the gender pay gap is not solely looking at it from the white women gender pay gap. It's looking at it from the wider and breaking it up into everybody else. And you can see that there is a huge gap, right? So there's datas everywhere that will help you make the decision in terms of how you can continue to do the work that you do in DEI. The next part we're going to look at is the need for radical reform. How do we move beyond DEI fatigue and the weaponization of woke? The answer lies in radical reform. In this segment, we've been talking about DEI. I encourage organizations to open up the full word so that definition and why we do what we do, or why you do what you do in terms of creating this initiative, it's about widening the pool of diversity, and then it's about creating opportunity in an equitable way that addresses the unique and different needs that the diverse group you're targeting experience. And then it's about creating that inclusion where everybody, their skill set, what they bring to the table, who they are as people is included in the organization. And I will add in the missing B, belonging, and then about making sure that everybody feels like they belong within your organization, right? So you need to nurture that true inclusion and belonging within your organization. And for you to do that, you need to start by working with the employees that you have right now. The people in your organization, do they feel included? Do they feel a sense of belonging? Do they feel that in you creating opportunity to diversify, is that going to have an impact on their progression? Because the elephant in the room, why we have resistance in the organization is we are human, right? Why we have resistance in the organization is that, let's really go back into that human thing, is you're in a job that you love, and you want the opportunity to grow, you want to be paid well, and suddenly your organization is saying, we want to bring more diversity, we want to bring different people into the organization, we want to help them progress and all these kind of stuff. But have you been offering the same things to the people that are in your organization right now? Or have you suddenly just jumped on the bandwagon and said, right, we need to get diversity in our organization because we don't have it, right? So create that environment first within and make sure that people are secure and aware that bringing in diversity in your organization is not that you're replacing them. You are bringing in people with skill set that will help to grow and advance your organization. So have a full clarity and share your why and purpose to your organization, to your staff, so that they're clear in there, right? So in creating that environment, this is where every individual, regardless of the background, will feel valued, they'll feel respected, they'll feel empowered to contribute fully. And belonging for me is the biggest key that is missing when it comes to the conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We do all of that, but then we forget, how do we make sure that people then feel they belong and they'll stay within our organization? So we do need to reframe DEI. And for that to happen again, we need to shift from conversation to action. Organizations, you must commit to concrete, measurable action that drives real change. This includes setting clear goals that you share within your organization. You're then tracking your progress and you're holding your leadership to account. Every single person, every single leader should have a responsibility to the progression of your DEI. It shouldn't just be sat on the shoulder of your DEI head of DEI, especially if that head of DEI has no authority to then change key elements of your organization that will allow certain action to progress. So it's essential that you empower your DEI leaders with the authority and the resources they need to drive the change. So this means you're giving them a seat at the executive table, you're listening to the insight, and you're supporting the initiatives with a genuine commitment and investment, just as Goldman Sachs has done. Go and have a read at how they've managed to create this project, who is leading this project, how that leader and the team are supported, and how the people who are taking part in this program feel. So radical change requires honesty and transparency. So organization must be willing to acknowledge the shortcoming and engage in open, candid discussions about the challenges they face. Some of the problems that organizations have when it comes to committing to their DEI action plan is that everybody wants to be the first one to transform their organization, to say they have transformed the organization. They want to be the first one to have the badge of being the most inclusive organization. This constant need to be the first one to show this positive face means that then when things are not working, you're not facing up to it because it's been swept under the carpet, because you do not want to have an image that there are things in your organization that doesn't work. If we can get past that and start to show and share and discuss challenges, you will find that your competitor is probably going through the same thing. But remember, the reason you're doing this is that we want to dismantle the inequality that is in a society. We want to start to ensure that people that have the skill set to do the roles and the jobs that they want to do are able to access these opportunities and are not blocked because of their race, their gender, their background, etc. So be transparent in how you're working on your initiatives. Build trust and foster that continuous culture of improvement. So your improvement is agile, is iteration, is reflective. You're going to have some pitfalls, you're going to pick yourself up again, and then you're going to continue to do the work. So moving forward, we're giving you some more steps here, right? Quick steps for you. So if you are working with us, you can come and talk to us here. If you're not a client of Prospect, let me give you some extra juice for you to continue. Let's get into some coaching here. Let's get into some consultancy for you. How do you move forward? Number one, let's take a pause. Let's assess your current DEI efforts. So conduct a research of your existing DEI initiative, identify what is working and what isn't working. So you can do this by running an anonymous survey within your organization to really have an understanding of what is and what isn't working. And also you want to have an understanding of the sentiment within your organization. Are people feeling sidelined because of your DEI initiatives where you have focus on different groups of people, but you haven't been given any attention within your organization? Some people might say, oh, that's not necessary. But yes, in order for you to create that cohesion, that collaborative work, in order for you to create a culture where people see people for the skill set that they're bringing in rather than a DEI hire, you need to understand how people feel. Are you already giving to your current staff, your employees, what you're promising to do and give to diverse employees that you're wanting to attract? Once you've done that, you then want to set clear goals, establish specific measurable goals for diversity, equity, and inclusion that aligns with your organization's overall mission and values. The reason we want you to do that is because it then means that you're not going to be picking up and dropping your DEI initiatives like hotcake every time when the world suddenly goes too far right and is too woke to be running DEI initiatives, you suddenly drop it. You want to be, again, like Goldman Sachs, who have used data, information to say, no, we're going to continue to do what we're doing. We don't need to shout about it, but we're going to let you know the reason we're doing it is because we have the data, information to back up what we're trying to do. And find your data that aligns with your organization mission and value, and with the DEI initiatives that you create. Empower your leaders. Ensure that DEI leaders have the authority, resources, and support needed to drive meaningful change. This bit cannot be missed out. The key part here, for you to drive change, people need to be given the authority to implement the change. So maybe another survey here is, how do you give authority within your organization? How do you make decisions to implement? How long does it take to make decisions to implement the change that you need to make? Be realistic and reality of that with your people, okay? Implement concrete action. So move from conversation to action by implementing initiatives that addresses the root cause of inequality and promote genuine inclusion. Some of these action could be around conversations, banter, how people behave in your organizations. There are many individuals in organizations who are protected, behind banter, the language that they use, who use age as a reason why they can't change, where they come from. Things that I've heard in the past in some of the places that I've worked in, where racist or discriminative language were used, yet I was told that this is just how we are. This is just the way, it's just banter. So you need to address the root issues within your organization that is causing inequity, that is breaking the inclusion, that is creating the divide within your organization. So there's a lot of honest work that you have to go through. And of course, then that leads to the work of belonging. So belonging won't happen if you don't address some of the difficult issues within. So belonging is important. So keep belonging in mind. Do people feel they belong? Are they committed to it? Are you giving people the confidence in terms of the opportunities within, so that they don't feel threatened by diverse people coming into the workplace? Engage in honest, transparent communication about your DEI. So maintain transparency, number 6. Maintain transparency by being honest and communicating your DEI efforts and progress, building trust and have accountability. So bring in external partners as your accountability of your progression or not, so that you then are supported, right? In conclusion of this podcast, we need to rethink diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI. It requires us to be radical. It requires us to be action-orientated, to prioritize that inclusion and belonging. We want to empower, number 1, empower your leaders to commit to action. Number 2, create a culture of honesty and transparency throughout your organization. Break the stereotype and the perception of DEI hire within your organization, and allow people to know that you're bringing in people based on the skill set, is that you are widening the pool, which brings in innovation. Let's shift away from the surface level initiative where we are just bringing people in for representation and then they're not growing. In order for you to build that retention, as the leaders of your organization, you need to be of the mind that you can see the next CEO of your organization being somebody of a diverse background who has the skill set to drive your organization to the next level. So when you are creating your DEI initiative, don't just create it from the number of people we can get in, the diverse people we can get in, the makeup of that diversity. Also then create the next step. How are people going to be progressed in your organization? What is the reality of progression within your organization? How do people do this? Yeah. And then when you get that, it then allows you to start to build that inclusion in there. So thank you so much for joining us today. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue to explore more around this area. In the next segment, we are going to talk a little bit more about the difference between diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because we need to go back to the roots, back to the foundation, in order for us then to start to implement quality initiative and action in the coming years. Thank you so much. Bye.